Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer coming to you with another Madden video for the Retro franchise, 32-team franchise. What I'm doing right now is that because Madden 25 isn't right now as moddable, I'm starting to go back and try to better explain the history behind some of these teams. So I don't know how many of these I'm going to do, but I'm going to try to start getting these updated, where I'm going to go by each individual team and have a separate episode of what happened in that season, and then a separate episode for the off season up till current day, and just kind of give a storyline about what happened that season, who were the significant players, the coaching staff, and so forth, because there is a lot of storyline when you play over a decade as all 32 teams. So the first series I'm going to start with is the storyline of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's the coaching staff. As you can see, they started out with Bill Cowher as head coach, Mike Mularkey, Tim Lewis as OC and DC. This is the Rooney family that's been running the team. And there are some of the positional coaches. I think probably the only ones you'd probably recognize you see is Ken Whisenhunt to start off this franchise. Again, these are all the coaches that you start with in the 2002-2003 season. And technically, I think in Madden 20, which is what I started in, you didn't even have coordinators. So this was all based off of the real-life coaching staffs of the time. In their very first season in my franchise, they had a miserable 5-11 season. And as you can see, they won 4-2 in the division. So the only teams they were able to beat were the Cleveland Browns in Week 4, the Bengals in Week 6, the Bengals again in Week 12, and the Ravens in Week 17, when they weren't really given their all because they were already in the playoffs. And so as you can see, they even lost to Cleveland in Week 29, or not Week 29, Week 9. They lost to Baltimore. The only team they beat that wasn't a playoff or that wasn't a division team was the Houston Texans in Week 14. So this was a very rough year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then you have the quarterback that started the season was Cordell Stewart. As you can see, he has a 2-4 record. Only started the first 6 games or the first 7 weeks of the season. He had 1,100 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, sacked 8 times, and had that 1 rushing touchdown. Let's just say after the first 7 weeks, we decided that maybe there's a better change to go with. So they did replace him mid-season. But you can see the 1 rushing touchdown right there. I mean, Stewart's mobility was nice, but when it came down to winning games, again, he was only there at a 33% win rate. But he had some good bombs like that one there you see with Hines Ward. And that was a fun play for him. But definitely knew that we needed a change and trying to see what can possibly work when they kept losing to some of these teams. And so here's kind of a summary of Cordell Stewart. You can see right there, not the best start to this season. Then replacing him at quarterback was Tommy Maddox. He went 3-7 in his starting time. Unfortunately, that was not much better. I mean, it was a worse win rate than Cordell Stewart. But you look at the 32 touchdown passes that Maddox threw versus Cordell's 9, right? We see that the productivity was so much better. Cordell Stewart had like 6 interceptions. So 2 interceptions thrown by Tommy Maddox was definitely much better to protect the ball. He did get sacked a good number of times. 20 in a season is pretty rough for any quarterback. But Bill Cowher wanted to make the change from the running quarterback in Stewart to more of the pocket passer, which worked really well for this season. But Tommy Maddox was not able to get as many wins either. They still found ways to lose games, which was just kind of disappointing. So there is his overall stats. Then, of course, we have running back Jerome Bettis. Bettis had over 1,000 yards rushing for Pittsburgh, despite the downward season for them. 124 attempts, double-digit touchdowns with 11 rushing touchdowns. No receiving touchdowns. It was all on the ground for him. But the air game was not the best for Pittsburgh this year with their quarterback challenges. But you can see Bettis just the powerful running back he is and was. Definitely fun to play with during this franchise. So there you see more and more highlights of him this season. More elusive than I thought. Like that, there's a few plays where it's just he goes untouched. There's a good little juke move right there. But also, he was a very good power back, too. So, Bettis having a great start to this season and a great finish to the season, but just not getting the wins he deserved. Then we had Amos. I don't know if it's Zero or Zuru, but he was the second rusher for Pittsburgh, only bringing in 82 yards. But that was where it was all the Jerome Bettis show. But Zero was able to get a receiving touchdown, as you can see right then and there. There's the stats for the year. Then we've got the wide receivers for Pittsburgh. Hines Ward led the team with an impressive year, 64 receptions, 1,300 yards, and an impressive 15 receiving touchdowns. Right here, you're going to see some of the highlights of Hines Ward. And so, again, a very reliable, iconic receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, just having an iconic season. You saw some highlights earlier, even with Cordell Stewart, where he was making some big grabs. And there's the big catch right there against Cincinnati. Then you have the deep bomb by Tommy Maddox to Hines Ward, making it look easy, even though they still lost that game. Then you have, even in the snow, Hines Ward coming through with a big catch there. So, as you can see, the drop down there to Plaxico Burress, who you'll see some highlights coming up. Burress had about almost 50% less receiving yards. But Hines Ward was the one making all the grabs and the fancy plays. And really, I was surprised that Pittsburgh had all these weapons and they still were not able to come away with a better record than 5 wins. But now we look at some Plaxico Burress highlights. I think he's 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Big receiver. I forgot that Plaxico Burress was with the Steelers early in his career. And look at that beautiful grab there. I thought that was a pretty one. Just right over the defender. And here we go, another play there in Jacksonville. And that was Burress helping them kind of come back in that game, which they still lost. There's that other camera highlight. Now, the one that doesn't have many highlights was Terrence Mathis. So, I mean, he was the 4th ranked receiver. But Mark Bruner, the tight end, did get a lot of good opportunities there to get the victory and to get some catches there. You can see 9 receiving touchdowns. So he was the 2nd touchdown receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers with 662 yards. But Mathis was with 509 yards, 4 TDs, and he ends up kind of calling it quits at the end of the year. I think here's the last snowy highlight for the Pittsburgh receivers and how they performed in this first season. Pittsburgh's defense came through in many different games, but I mean, you can see right there, mostly against the Browns in their division is where they were highlighted the most. You can see that Brent Alexander had the most tackles for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jason Gilden had 5.5 sacks. And then James Ferrier, Lee Flowers, and Dwayne Washington, along with Brent Alexander, all had 1 interception. So that was unfortunate because no player had more than 1 interception this season, which is a major downside for Pittsburgh. And as for field goals, Jeff Reed was 8 of 8, made 10 out of 10 extra points. If you like kicker stats, you can look longer at this image. And of course, in any season, there are always mistakes, and here are some of them. You can see very early a tight game against New England that they did end up losing. Cordell Stewart fumbles the ball right there. Here against New Orleans Saints, Cordell Stewart also decides to make a throw, and it's just a blatant drop by Bruner. We have another sack there, which was very common. Maddox with 20 sacks on this year. And then we have another error right here where Bruner gets hit, fumbles, and loses the ball. And when the season is all well and done, there were only 2 players to make the Pro Bowl, which was Hines Ward and Alan Faneca. Obviously, they did not make the playoffs. So there's no playoff stats or playoff highlights to show you, but hope you enjoyed this video. This was year 1 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2002 to 2003. Thank you for watching. If you like more of this type of content, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we're going to try to highlight more seasons with the Steelers and also highlight more seasons with other teams so you can kind of get an idea as to how this franchise has developed over the years. Year one's always the hardest because you're dealing with the original roster, but then once the seasons start to pile on and you are able to develop your own storyline, your own culture for the team, it becomes a very enjoyable experience. But I know if you're watching this series for the first time and you look at my 500 some hours of video content, and probably more hours than that, it can be overwhelming. But if you're interested in checking out these games or this series, there's all these videos dating back to Madden 20 all the way to Madden 24 playing these games. But again, thanks for watching, and hopefully you see the next video.